Hello, Patrick.
Hello, Linwood Esquire. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you? I know you're mad at me, but, it is what it is.
Say again, say again.
I know you're mad with me, Patrick, but it is what it is. I only
Lynn,
spoke the truth.
No, you didn't, but it's okay. I'm not in the least mad at you, Lynn. I'm not in the least mad at you. I wanted to call you today, literally. I don't know what, but I wanted to. I've thought of you so fondly all year. I don't know if you've seen how much I quote you and how I defend you and stuff, and softly. But I'm not in the least mad at you, man. I think that you're a little kooky, and it seems there's.
Now, hold on a second, Patrick. Kooky is a word that would fit you. Don't insult me. It doesn't fit me. You call to talk to me, or you call to insult me? Make up your mind, and we can talk if you want to talk.
What was the first choice?
Talk to me. Don't insult me when somebody tells me I'm kooky and I know I'm not. The person that says it is the kooky one. Now let's talk about what you want to talk about.
It can also be said with affection. It can be a nice way of saying to somebody, "Hey, I'm affection for you, but let's talk."
We don't know each other, Pat. You don't have any affection for me. What do you want to talk about?
Well, one thing I wanted to do was talk about out of my affection for you. I wanted to call and tell you something.
Okay.
I saw something that you said about when Kyle accused you of this, which I immediately told people this is total bullshit on television. Flynn sent me you recorded some journalist who called you to ask about it, and you did a nice job tearing it up. And Flynn sent me that. I didn't know anything about these accusations. There's some guy named David Hancock is his name.
Oh yeah, old Dave Fraudcock Hancock.
Was he one of the SEALs who was down there with you when I was there?
He had already been thrown off my property before you came here.
Okay, I wanted to tell you, do you still have the SEALs protecting you?
No, I've got some very good people, but they're not SEALs.
Good for you. What I've been wanting to call and tell you, and I even kind of wanted to tell you then, but I didn't feel I won't know you well enough. That's a real problematic community, and you should not have it with you. And that's why I was looking for your number today, to call you and say, keep all the SEALs away from you. They're reporting back. I knew that some of the people there were very dodgy. And we're glad to be here. So I was just trying to reach you today to give you a warning. I had no idea that any of this other stuff was going on. I would like to know.
I quit doing business with the Navy SEALs when I got rid of the Hancock group.
No, there was a guy, one or two there when I was at Motley.
Well, I got rid of the Hancock group after you were here, but Hancock was gone at the end of October.
Oh.
And then there were a couple that stayed behind, but I figured them out and documented what they were doing, and I got rid of them too.
Oh, we knew.
I'm not someone to be played. I might get played for a little while, but God gave me the ability usually to figure it out soon, in time, let's say.
Well, good for you. And over the course of December, January, I learned a lot more about some things going on there. And I've always wondered what in that community.
Oh yeah, the SEALs community. I mean, they're good SEALs and they're bad SEAls. Kind of like in everything. Kind of like in the audit. There's good audit people, they're bad audit people.
Tell me about that. What are your thoughts
about the audit?
Am I a good audit person or a bad audit person?
Patrick, I haven't kept up with you.
Well,
I saw you wrote a book. I saw you made a movie. I didn't read the book. I didn't watch the movie. I know that you're involved with Mike. I know there's an involvement with Sidney. I know y'all are in defendtherepublic.org. I know that you have the America Project. I'm not sure where all this money's going, but I think somebody owes to the American public a full accounting. You asked me about Kyle. Fight Back was fully audited independently in 2020, which was the only year. Let me finish now. You raised the question. The only year that we raised money for Kyle. You want me to finish what I'm saying? 2020 was the year we raised money for Kyle from September to November. We have had a full audit by an outside independent auditing firm, CPA. Our books are pristine. Now, why don't you do the same thing? Everybody's owed the truth of what all this money's going to and where it's being spent. If everything's fine, like it was with Fight Back, when the false accusations are made, like they've been made against Fight Back, you have the ability to answer them and then sue the hell out of anybody that's made those false statements. Watch out for what's going to happen soon.
Well, thank you for your legal advice. I've never bothered. I mean, at some point, of course, there's clearly a lot you don't know.
I don't know.
So,
tell me what I don't know. Or tell me what I need to know.
know.
I know there's a lot of things I don't know. I don't know if the earth is flat or round. I think it's round, but I don't need to know it. What do I need to know, Patrick? Just tell me.
I'll tell you real quick. On March 5th, both Sidney and Mike asked me to move down to Florida and stand up defending the Republic. I said no. And they said, oh, it's all going to fall apart. We're going to need you to do this. Sidney was moving to Florida. You have to do this. I said, I'll come down for 4 months and get it stood up. And then I'm going to turn the keys over to you. I came down. I lasted 11 days with Sidney. I'm not going to go into the details, but there was one day, 11 work days, 15, when I came down on March 12th, 1 week later, and I can tell you on April 3rd, I think, Mike Flynn, Joe Flynn, Patrick Byrne, and the other 5 people that I had hired and built an office around all walked out the door on Sidney and had never spoken a word to her since. Now, you can infer what you want from that, but by lumping with me Sidney, it tells me that I haven't spoken a word to Sidney since April 6th, and I never will again. And
is defendingtherepublic.org under federal investigation?
I walked out. We all resigned on April 6th. We walked out the door. I gave her a laundry list of things she had to clean up and told her she had to get an auditor and showed this and everything. She refused to let me look at any. Well, I can't tell you anymore. But I left her. We walked out after 17 days there, and I had hired about 5 people, and we had Mike and Joe, and we all walked out on the same day, and you can infer what you want from that. But you're a smart man, you can probably guess. And so I've been no idea.
I try not to guess. I try to take facts and connect logical conclusions from them. But listen, I do know that Sidney has told me that there was a falling out with you and Mike over money. She claimed, and this is just very general from my recollection, some amount of money in the millions that apparently she felt y'all were supposed to pay but didn't pay, and she had to pay. I didn't get involved in it. Wasn't my business.
Okay.
I told her, and I've got text where I've told her that I thought it would be good for the Patriot movement if she reconciled her differences with Mike. I document what I do. I'm a lawyer, 45 years. I didn't fall off the truck yesterday, Patrick.
Just so you know, that's all a complete fabrication. There was anything about money. I have texts where Sidney, some of it has to do with Sidney was trying to beg me, and I said no. And we have texts and witnesses to that. And then she became a woman scorned. And that's what her animosity towards me is all about. Was zero question of anything to do with money, anything to do with Mike and her and money. That's all a lie. It's all a fabrication. It's completely false. Has no bearing to anything in reality.
Well, let me tell you this. There's one thing I do know about, and that is a woman scorned. I've had 4 divorces. It's not good. If Sidney wanted to bed you down and you turned her down, I don't know Sidney. I only know her from a professional standpoint, but that's really neither here nor there to me.
Well, she was incredible. If you've ever seen the movie The Devil Wears Prada, working with her was that movie squared. And everyone walked out the door. And yes, there were, in fact, just at the point, I don't want to tell too much, but I can tell you that within a day or two of being there, I said, I need to get my hands on the money. And she started telling me, well, there's one account with $1 million in it. You manage that. And I said, no, I need to audit. We need to build accounting around everything. And she said, you can audit that one bank account. And I said, that's not how it works, Sidney. When I sign things to the IRS and the federal government, I got to sign for every dollar that came in, not just one little bank account that you created for me. I need visibility to the whole money. And then I got a CFO, a CPA, CFO to come in. And she said no to me. I said, well, I said to myself, once she has a CFO, he'll make her understand. You can't just say, we have a CFO. And after 10 days, he said to her, we need an audit. And she blew her top. And I said, no, we need an audit. We need to audit soup to nuts every dollar that came into this business. You won't believe how much money I heard came in. We never saw like over $800,000 of it.
She told me when she was here, she was getting her foundation legally finalized, and she told me she had $7 million, and I went, what? I said, man, how did you get that much money? I said, Fight Back just struggles along, And she said, well, I've got to finish up doing some things technically on the legal aspect, and then I can start paying myself back my fees. And candidly, Patrick, that bothered me. I didn't know Sidney had made the public into a client, which I don't think should be done. I don't do that.
Right.
Because that opens the door to self-dealing. But that's all I know about it. Except I've heard that there's a federal investigation. I could be getting bad information, but I don't think so. I think she's already gotten, some people have gotten subpoenas for documents.
I believe there is. I wouldn't be surprised if there is one in part, because I made a couple comments in the places they needed to be made. By the way, it's not $7 million.
That's what she told me. She wasn't talking about y'all. It was just, she said her foundation, DefendTheRepublic.org, had $7 million. She asked me to be on the filing papers. At the time, I said, it's a favor to do it. And then I wanted off. And so she quickly turned around and got me out of it. Sidney signed my name to certain lawsuits without my knowledge or permission. Yeah. And she hasn't been honest about that. And it's gotten me in a lot of unnecessary entanglements with bar grievance committees. I'm not happy about it.
Yeah.
Because I think I was set up by Sidney Powell. Do you hear me?
Well, since we're on the same side of this, Lynn, I'll tell you, that's why we walked out the door. The day I found out it wasn't, when I first started finding out, she had told me when I came down there was $15 million. And so you won't have to worry about any money, Patrick. There's $15 million in the bank.
You're talking about the day you came down to Tomotley?
No, the day I came down to take over Defending the Republic. And
that was March of 21.
March of 21. And she told me there's $15 million in the bank. You won't have any problem. But, well, I guess here there's an account with $500,000 in it, and the rest of the money is back in Texas. And that's where I was saying, well, we're going to have to go back and get all that money and get it. And some of it had come into her personally and her law firm and this and that. There wasn't any DTR bank account. And I said, well, we're going to have to, we got to account for every penny of that. I don't care where it came in, but of course we've got to scrape all that together and pull it together and account that all the dollars that came in were together for Sidney. And that's what she said no to. And then I got a CFO. And after 10 days, the CFO and I went and explained it to her. And she said no. And I thought that she was just innocent and didn't understand. But then I found out it wasn't $15 million. It was at least $20 million. It might be $30 million.
Good.
And that's when I realized.
Where did she tell you that money was coming from?
We know that since she went on Rush or something and talked about, my understanding is that this all started on Rush. And she said, I'm on this thing called Defending the Republic. And people started sending her like postcards with $1 taped to it or a quarter taped to it and letters and everything, $5, $10, checks. But those were all sent to, some were just Sidney Powell, Dallas, Texas. Some were the Sidney Powell law firm. Some were the Sidney Powell home.
If somebody sent me $30 million collectively, I'd want to make damn sure I knew exactly where it came from.
Well, she just, as far as we can tell, and then she got a bank account set up for DTR, and $15 million ended up in that. But some unknown number, I've heard numbers as high as $70 million, Lynn. I've heard numbers I don't understand.
I don't think Rush Limbaugh had that many viewers.
I've heard more recently. I don't give any credibility to that number. But when I started hearing that there was she didn't think she was going to show us the other $15 million, and B, it might be $20 million or $30 million. And I know it was at least $20 million because we finally had access to one form, a bank processing form. Part of it, when we pledged $2 million to Maricopa, she got to, after we all left and she took control, she wouldn't send $1. We had sent $500,000. She never sent the next $1.5 million. She buys a few billboards. She defends the law. It shouldn't be called Defending the Republic. It should be called Defending the Sidney Powell. All she wanted to do was focus on, with Howard Finkelbaum, or whatever his name is, defending Sidney Powell's law cases. Had nothing to do with doing anything out in the world that actually, not the step that we're doing, driving audits, driving investigations. She wouldn't spend one penny on anything. It was all just
the only thing she'll spend a penny on is anything that involves defending the lawsuits or the bar actions against her. So it's to me, it's starting to look like a big charade that she's doing as little as she can out there in the world to help our cause, but on that basis, raising the most money she can. By the way, it's a for-profit. It's not defending the Republic turns out to be for-profit. And they're paying themselves stock options. They've arranged themselves stock options.
Well, who's themselves? Who are themselves? Who's in it?
Well,
is Howard you said Howard?
Yes.
What's his last name?
It's a Jewish last name. He was on he's the constitutional guy who was on her team. He was part of some of the filings. He's the guy who filed. By the way, it turns out Sidney filed some of those things there's filings that were so bad that she put your name on. She didn't even read the filing. Howard wrote them, and they were terribly done. And Howard's also the guy this spring who made the filing in her defense on her libel action, where he basically filed, and then it was this very damaging sentence that's like, well, I'm Sidney Powell, no one should have taken me what I said seriously anyway. It was a terribly constructed. Remember how they roasted her back in like March?
Yeah, I think she said something about nobody would expect it to be true, and it was a poorly worded phrase. I remember looking at it, that she was saying that she was expressing her legal opinion based on facts, but it was the opinion that she was referring to. It was poorly worded. I didn't have anything to do with it. I just saw it in the media.
Yeah, it was. I know that every libel litigation, that's one of the defenses that you're saying. You have a whole bunch of different defenses, and that's one, especially for a lawyer. But it was worded particularly badly, and that was Howard. And here's another thing to know about Howard. Howard, until October of 2020, Howard was Hillary Clinton's attorney.
What?
Howard works for Hillary Clinton.
Until when?
What?
Until when?
Like very recently, before this election, he claims to have switched sides. We caught him going around snapping pictures inside the place of people's papers and they're on people's desks. So at Sidney's instructions, I got a little bank building,
Excuse me.
We caught him sneaking around taking pictures of things on people's desks. We think he's working for the other side. And he filed the responsive pleading to the libel argument where he had that terrible sentence that was used to excoriate and mock Sidney. And he also is the guy who wrote those terrible complaints that Sidney didn't even really read, but that she signed her name to. But I've learned from other lawyers who were involved that Sidney did not even, the ones that had all these typos and mistakes and those pleadings, that she had not even read them, according to other people who were on her staff. And they got filed, and that's what she signed her name to. Just FYI.
Yeah, and I'm the one that got blamed for it, and I didn't even know my name was on the things.
So if the feds are investigating Sidney, look, it was all I could do not to drop a dime on her. I thought it was the right thing to do, but I did make it known in the right places. But I mean, I didn't have knowledge, and I consulted a lawyer because did I have knowledge or what? But I sure walked out the doors. Within a week of leaving, more facts had come in that made me think, holy shit, Sidney's just running this as a scam. She's raising this money. It's secretly for profit, and there's nothing. And she gave herself stock options. Have you ever heard somebody do one of these things and give themselves stock options?
I've never heard of. It's not anything I've ever been involved in, so I don't know anything about it.
No,
so I wouldn't be able to comment whether it's right or wrong. But the overall picture that you're painting is pretty bleak.
It's really bleak. Yeah. So I walked out the door. I won't have anything to do with it. And to be honest, Lynn, you're the first person other than Mike and Joe that I've talked to this way, because I haven't said anything. Meanwhile, I know she's out in the world. She also twice got drunk and really very directly tried to get me to bed in front of other people. And she got really hurt, and she wrote me love letters and this kind of nonsense about how hurt she was and stuff. And then when it all snapped and we walked out the door, she became super vindictive. And all she's done is go around for 6 months and raise and make up stuff about me and Flint.
She was here for that period of time, and she came back for brief few days. I didn't even know Sidney drank. I didn't see her drinking when she was here.
Around you guys, she's that's a whole big act. This whole evangelical thing, that's just for your crowd.
Well, she told me she loved Jesus.
Well, that may all be. She plays it up when she's around your crowd. When she's not around your crowd, it's a different woman.
I got you. Wolf in sheep's clothing.
I'm not saying that. I just think she's not, all people, she's actually what I started thinking, Lynn, was when she was acting so batty. She was acting like a menopausal woman, but she's too old for that. But sometimes I'm sure you've been around women of a certain age that they act batty, and you think, I'm not going to argue with a person. I just want some distance. I'll give you an example. Her whole problem in Florida. So she opens these things like Defend the Republic in Texas, and then she decided to open one in Florida, and sort of to compartmentalize out everything that happened. So she got it organized in Florida, or formed it, and sort of a few weeks later got a letter from the Secretary of Agriculture of Florida, and for some reason, solicitation licenses are managed in Florida by the Secretary of Agriculture, which is a very powerful position here. And there's some lefty woman, perfectly polite, and it said something like, I note that you're operating in Florida and raising money, but you've not yet registered under the license to solicit money. Please do so. If you pay $1,500 to make up for the past and do so, we'll just go forward, drop this and go forward. Well, in my book, you say yes.
Hold on one second, Patrick. I gotta let my dogs out there. Hang on one second. Come on, puppies. Come on. Get these two, Morgan. I'm sorry, Patrick. Dog patrol.
No, I understand.
Okay, I'm back. Just another day in dog paradise.
Well, you did have dog paradise. I thought very fondly for the end of our couple days together, and I thought you were terrific.
It was a pleasure to meet you. I had never met you before. We spoke the first night you got here. I asked Sidney what your role was, and she said, well, Patrick just provided the jet plane for Mike and them. And then you left, and so I assumed you were being a very gracious taxi driver, so to speak.
There's more to it, but Sidney never understood the whole thing. So I wanted to ask you, though, are you... I'm back on Sidney. I thought that she was losing her mind. We got that letter where the woman offered for $1,500. Hey, I see that you broke the rules here. Just pay me $1,500. Set up your license. Go for it. And we'll call it quits. To me, the answer to that is yes, ma'am. I won't let it happen again. Sidney. No way, you're Sidney Powell. I've been named one of the top 5 lawyers in the world. I'm not going to admit to making a mistake. No, we're going to fight this, blah, blah, blah. Well, because she did that little thing blew up into this whole investigation. Now, I haven't even heard about it for 3 months, but the last I heard 3 months ago, there were a bunch of people starting to look very hard at her. And that could have all been averted if she had sent a check for $1,500. So that's the kind of decision-making she was doing a lot that made me think, this chick's going crazy. She's as pleasant to work around as the Meryl Streep character in The Devil Wears Prada. And then when she finally said no, when you don't get to look into all the money that's come in, you only get to look at this $800,000 that I've sent to a bank in Naples, Florida for you to operate out of, is when we all said we want to get as far away from this as we can. And I think it's perfect. I almost, based on that set of facts, I did not have enough reason that I felt an obligation to call the authorities. But a week later, I learned something, that it wasn't $15 million, it was at least $20, maybe $30 million. And even anyway, I think but what she's done for the last 6 months, I've never spoken this way about her. You're the first person, other than the Flynns and I, talk about this, but she spent 6 months trying to get everyone in the evangelical community to cut me out. I won't appear with Patrick Byrne. She made up, I heard that I poisoned her. I heard that I drugged and date raped her. I've heard crazy stuff, and she's just batshit. That's all I can say. I literally have
Well,
heard so she gets with people and starts rumors. One is like that I poisoned her, and another is that I drugged her and date raped her. It's the crazy, what can you say? So
I'm flabbergasted. I've never heard anything like this. I didn't know Sidney before she came here. I thought she and Mike were coming down here to work on finding evidence to support her lawsuits. I didn't really know what the people were doing. I knew she was doing drafting of lawsuits, but, I just was trying to be hospitable. I mean, I thought it was the patriotic thing to do. I had the property, and I was never really sure. When she got here on a Friday, she said, Mike's coming on Sunday. And I said, Mike Flynn? She said, yeah, I'd never met him before. And he came, and I said, how long is he going to stay? And she said, I don't know. And then, of course, they stayed several weeks. But, I had the property. I had the size. I didn't mind them working. I tried to be nice to them. I helped a little bit if I could. Doug Logan helped me look into a computer that I was trying to get into our Fight Back domain, and we couldn't. This guy Hancock, we found out. Well, Doug said somebody had hacked it. I took it to an independent company, and they found that Hancock had hacked it, and then we later found that he had stolen our donor list. So, all of this stuff is kind of rolled out on me over time in terms of having concerns about Sidney and some, candidly, concerns about Mike. And Patrick, I've reached out to them to talk, and Sidney doesn't, she's promised to call me. She never does. Mike doesn't call me. I've asked him to talk to me. I did not like the Vernon Jones endorsement. I know who Vernon Jones is. I thought he was inconsistent with Mike's character as I understood it. And I raised that with him. I was very disturbed about the prayer that he gave out with Hank Kuhneman from a faith standpoint. And there were some other things that I started to learn that it just set off alarms.
The prayer being the one where Mike said the legions?
Yeah, I think the 7 rays of light and the legions. He said it was a Catholic prayer, and it's not. He lied about it. And then he told me he did. He told me he did not have any affiliation with Pegasus, and that's a blatant lie.
Pegasus? What's Pegasus?
Yeah. Pegasus is a company that I think Apple just sued him, involved in spyware and phones. And I asked Mike about it when he was telling me, we're in different circumstances, because Mike charges a lot of money to speak. I don't like that, but that's his personal right. I don't think as a patriot.
Money to spook?
I'm sorry?
Mike charges money to spook?
To speak.
Oh.
I've heard $25,000 to $50,000 a speech. I don't mind anybody making money, but when you're fighting for your country, usually you sacrifice. But that's his choice. But I thought he should disclose it to the people that were coming to these meetings so they would know what the speakers were being paid.
I do too.
And I raised that with Mike. He never really talked to me about it other than say, well, we have different circumstances. And I said, well, all my money's in land. I can't take a handful of soil to the grocery store, but I'm okay. And I said, I know you went through a rough time for a few years, and, I know that costs a lot of money. And then I said, well, you made $1 million or something from Pegasus in 2016. He said, you know what I was talking about? It's fake news. That's not true, Patrick. Why would Mike lie to me?
I don't know anything about it. I don't know. But I've never had anything but super honorable in my dealings with him.
Well, then Joe Flynn connected me with a guy named Larry Johnson. Larry Johnson was all hot and bothered about me publishing the whistleblower's transcript. And I read him in a heartbeat as being a CIA or a deep state operative, and it turned out I was right. Well, how did Joe Flynn know him? And then Tracy Beans was one of the people that wanted me to run for chair of the South Carolina Republican Party, and she had a big function. And I went down, asked her if we could sell Win with Lynn t-shirts. She said no. And then she got on the stage and she spoke. She didn't mention my name. Mike got on the stage and he spoke, and he didn't mention my name. Now, I wasn't hurt about it. It just struck me as odd that someone was running for chair of a county that would not have anything to say about the person that she had urged to run for chairman. And Mike had, by that time, I think, endorsed me. She called me when I was on the way home and told me that people at the function were very angry because they wanted to hear me speak, and I didn't. I said, well, you didn't ask me. I don't take this stuff personally, but there's just a series of things. People that write for some of Tracy's stuff have been very attacking of me. Brian Cates. I don't see Mike ever defending me. And when Vernon Jones said that I was un-American, had made my money illegally, and was a racist, all of those things are false. There's not one shred of evidence to support them, which tells me Vernon Jones is the person that's un-American, made his money illegally, and is a racist. I raised that twice with Mike. Mike never responded. He never called Vernon Jones out about that. So it just bothered me. Something's not right now with Mike Flynn. I don't know what it is. I've tried to talk to him. I know there was involvement. Joe Flynn was the person that hooked me up with Ricky Schroeder, who loaned $150,000 to Fight Back sometime around November the 18th or 19th of 20, that pushed us to the $2 million to get Kyle out. I raised the money as quickly as I could. And then when I'm falsely maligned all over the country, if not world, by saying that I left the boy in jail so that I could grift off of him, that's such a blatant lie. Mike Flynn knows better than that, but he did not come out and say a word in my defense. What in the world is going on with Mike?
Wait a second. The only time I've heard that claim was the other night on CNN, or not CNN, Tucker. Kyle made a point. In a way that told me he'd been coached. I'm sure you've seen it now. He made a point to veer in his interview over and make this point that Linwood left me in, almost like he'd been coached to do it.
Oh, listen, he had to be coached because it's a lie. Once we raised the money, John Pierce, who at the time was representing him as the criminal lawyer, I never was. I had signed on to help him with defamation after the criminal case. He told us to stand down right after we made the bail, that they were going to do their own fundraising, so Fight Back stood down. We took everything off our website. He said he was going to handle the defamation cases. I said, here's a letter of withdrawal, and I wished him luck. And then all of a sudden, I understand Dave Hancock got involved. Well, that's a dot that's interesting, because Hancock was here right before Mike was here. But Mike was here in November. I'm sure I talked to him at times that I was busting my butt to try to help Kyle. And Mike Flynn sat silently. But Mike Flynn's written me all these nice notes telling me how he'd go to war with me and take a bullet in a firing squad with me. And then when Vernon Jones came after me, and then Kyle Rittenhouse came after me, old Mike Flynn got out of the foxhole and ran. Something's not right with Mike, Patrick.
Well,
and I tried to talk to him about it. He won't talk.
You mean in the last week you've tried to talk to him?
I have raised this by text messages over a course of weeks or longer, months.
How long has Kyle Rittenhouse been saying this bad stuff about you?
He got out. The verdict was, I think, Friday a week ago. And he got out. The verdict was around noon, and then they were promoting an interview with him that night where he must have done the interview right after the verdict. And then it went everywhere. All the Mockingbird media picked up on it. It's been a massive campaign, false smears against me. And here's my alleged foxhole buddy for the second time running. So I don't know. And then I connect the dot that Joe got Ricky Schroeder involved. And then I got information that you and Joe had wanted to approach the Rittenhouses after he got out on bail to raise $5 million for him through the America Project.
The name Kyle Rittenhouse has never came out of my lips until last
week. I've got
week.
A text message from Joe that says that not from you, but from him, that where he was trying to set up the meeting.
Well, I never heard of that.
Patrick, I don't say something unless I have reasonable factual evidence to support it.
You were saying Joe Flynn was trying to set up a meeting on behalf of the America Project.
It doesn't say that in the text, but that's what I was told, that it was you and Joe that wanted to meet with Kyle to try to raise him $5 million after I had made his bail. Whether that meeting, I don't know that the meeting took place. I just know, and then there was a confirmatory text that Joe sent. Didn't mention you, didn't mention the American Project, but it was consistent with the information I'd been provided.
I've never heard a word about it. or Kyle Rittenhouse in the context of the American Project.
I had the impression from your text today that maybe you had spoken with Kyle since the verdict.
I've not heard. I've never even. I paid zero attention to this. It was clear to me that it was self-defense from the day it happened, and I've paid zero attention for the year since. And a week ago, I tuned in on it and said, "Oh, great! It's going to be this guy's going to get off." Other than that, I've never talked about Kyle Rittenhouse with anyone. I don't think I've ever said the name until a week ago. Said the name aloud. So I don't know where any of this is coming from.
Well, listen, I don't discount the possibility that the information I got was inaccurate, but it was from a reliable source, and it was confirmed at least in part by a text message from Joe. So I just don't, Patrick, I don't just go out and say something. It took a lot for me to discuss Mike and Sidney. And your name was mentioned because of the information I had about the effort to talk to Kyle. I don't know anything about the America Project. I just know generally you have it. Like I said, I know you wrote a book. I know y'all did a movie. I don't know what else y'all are doing, but I just know this, Patrick, there's a lot of money in this audit movement and this whole movement to look into 2020 or to fix things going forward or whatever it is. There's a lot of people giving money, and so I'm looking over here going, maybe we ought to have an audit of everything and show people what they got and what they've done with it, which seems to me to be the right way to do it. That's what I did with Fight Back.
Fair enough, but just for the guy who runs the Maricopa audit, Doug Logan, did put out a statement about because there were a bunch of people, including Sidney, running around raising money for audits for Maricopa and claiming to be raising money for it.
Fight Back got Christina Bobbitt at OAN. She had a group called One Vote, One Something, and wanted me to go on and try to help her raise $150,000 for the Maricopa audit. Fight Back, the board voted to donate $50,000 because we support the audit. And then I put something on Telegram about it, and I think in a few days she had $150,000 or $60,000. So I knew there were people raising money. I don't know how much y'all paid. I think Mike told me that y'all put in like $5 million. I do have a text from him on that.
Say that again?
I have a text from Mike that said, I believe you and he put in $5 million into Arizona.
That's correct. $1 million from his group and $4 million from our group.
The thing that bothered me is that Doug Logan was in my house with Mike Flynn. Mm-hmm. And then Doug Logan is the head of the audit. I thought Doug was a fine Christian boy. I didn't know his experience. I wasn't sure what he was doing with Mike. I do know he helped me one time to try to get into my computer and said, I think you've been hacked, and I had it turned over to independent investigators. And then Doug's cyber ninjas running the audit. I have heard from a reliable source involved with the audit that there were some very serious mistakes and omissions made by Doug with respect to the final audit report. That bothers me. It makes me almost think that the audit was a scam to get money, delay, and discourage people from investigating 2020. Have you ever heard that before? Has there been any concerns raised in your mind that somebody might be doing that?
Close, and the same concern crossed my mind when their final report was tepid and watered down. However, having talked to the senators involved, the hardcore red meat senators, Borelli, Wendy Rogers, others, they tell me, because I was really furious, and I said, because Doug told me he'd been ordered to leave the word fraud out of the report and to make it as tepid as it was. And when I met with them, they said, no, we're the ones who made Doug do that because this is so devastating. We didn't want his report to be saying fraud. We want the Attorney General to say fraud. So his report, we instructed him to make it as bland and just fact as you can make it. The Attorney General has been begging the Senate, turn this over to me. I want to get criminal charges going. And they were holding the Attorney General off. Now, this is all directly from these senior senators in Arizona telling me this over lunch. They were holding the AG off so that they could, once the AG put his arms around it, then it could all get swallowed up and no one would know anything. So they said, let us finish our report. We'll get it to you. You take it from there. And that's what they did a few weeks ago or 6 weeks ago. And
Well,
then the AG is all over his teeth, toes, and fingernails.
I heard there were some serious problems with corrupted files that allegedly had been in the possession of Doug Logan for months, and he allegedly didn't know they were corrupted, but they were key files because they were images, scanned images of the ballots or something like that. And the person that found out was shocked that Doug had not known that months earlier. So, listen, I don't know the details. What I do know is that there are concerns about how Doug handled the audit. Doug was in my house with Mike Flynn. I don't know what he was doing. And so I have concerns about what Jim Penrose. Do you know Jim?
I love Jim.
I thought Jim was a fine Christian man. I've had information now since in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Jim Penrose may not be who he purported himself to be. I know he was with NSA. That's all I knew. I don't listen. Maybe I made the mistake of letting everybody come down here and take advantage of my hospitality.
No, it was great. It was great that you did that, and it was super useful. But he sort of has a new conjecture accusation per week.
Who is this?
And
Tell me. I'll tell you who is the person you think. Who?
It's Jovan. It's Jovan.
I've never spoken with Jovan. I don't, unless I saw him somewhere and said hello. But I've had concerns that people have brought to me just out of the community that said Jovan is not a legitimate guy. I don't know.
Well, I've heard that too.
I don't know.
I don't know because he doesn't. He's just finally getting. We don't know either about Jovan. Jovan, nothing rests on Jovan. Jovan seems to go off in his own world and research technical details.
Well, who was monitoring the $5 million whatever dollars y'all put into the audit?
That was Doug, and in retrospect, this was way beyond Doug. Doug runs a little 6-man, hyper-exclusive cyber security firm. It turns out he's not up to managing a project like this. And how it came, the grassroots movement got in Arizona that I funded I bought them pizzas in the early meetings and things like this and helped them get organized. And they got going. That grassroots movement over January, February, March got all this political pressure. Well, got the Senate to understand the problem. And then these senators started digging, and that's what led to the audit. But when the audit came along, there was no one who would do the audit other than IBM or Doug. No one everyone was afraid for their life. So Doug, however, I would agree in retrospect, it looks like Doug was way overmatched for the job. Doug runs a little 6-man operation that goes in and looks at your computers. It turns out this was way beyond him running something like this. I would agree with that.
Well, listen, we're not going to be able to solve all those problems. I did not say anything about you that was not based on credible information. I did not say anything about you to cast any aspersions on you. I did say that I thought there ought to be an audit.
Okay. How about let's switch subjects. I'm fine with that. I'm sure all of our stuff gets audited. American Project is a 501c4 and all the audited. How about something else? Just so you know, I'll get to the bottom line up front. In the back of my mind for some months has been, is it going to be possible someday for me to hire Lynn as an attorney? Before I tell you why, is there anything that's happened that would prevent that from possibly? Do you still have a bar license, I haven't followed your.
I still have a bar license. I'm obviously in the middle of trying to defeat the frivolous claims being brought against me by the Georgia bar. I still got an appeal in Delaware. I've got this ridiculous Michigan result where I did not even so much as breathe a breath in Michigan or even I didn't even know my name was on that complaint. So I've got to deal with that. But I was going to retire 2 years ago in Thanksgiving. I announced to my family I was going to retire, semi-retire, finish the salmon cases. And so while I still have my law license, I do not have a functioning law firm. And so I'm not really looking to get back into the practice of law. The court system is so corrupt right now that I think you don't have any idea what the rulings are going to be unless one side has something they want and they get it, because the rule of law is being ignored or distorted or changed ridiculously. My lawsuit filed in the Supreme Court of the United States was solid black letter law, but yet they didn't review it. Something's not right.
Something's not right.
So so I would say that I'm not in a position is it possible down the road that I could give you some advice as a lawyer? Yes, but it's not something I'd be in a position to do now and might not be able to do in the future. So I would not wait around for me. I may be out of the game either. I think voluntarily, I don't think they're going to take my law license because their complaints against me are as big a lies as Kyle Rittenhouse has been going around telling. There's a concerted effort that somebody's running to destroy my character and reputation. And I hope I do not find that Mike Flynn is involved in it.
I'm sure, Lynn, you're absolutely, well, if I couldn't imagine it because of all the times I see him promoting you. Just today, he sent to the America Project this recording of you doing a wonderful job manhandling that reporter. And I thought, gee, what a gentleman. No, he's always doing, like, good stuff, like sending us your good stuff.
Well, when it came time to speak up publicly for me with Vernon, he didn't do it, and I didn't think what he said about Kyle was, let's just say I appreciated him republishing my statement, but I didn't see him weigh in on what he should have, is that I am a man of integrity. I stole some money off my father's desk drawer when I was a kid because I liked to buy stuff at the school bookstore, and he left a bunch of change. I think he knew I was going to take some of it. But other than that, and I hope my father forgives me, he's passed away so he can hear me if he's in heaven. I've never cheated anybody out of a dime.
I know.
I never have worked for money. I've made money. God blessed me with some success, but I never put money ahead of my clients. And when these people came out and started viciously attacking me, telling me I'm insane, I think I'm God. Mike Flynn has been around me. Mike Flynn's the general. He says I'm his fellow patriot. He should have had his ass up raising hell about those statements made by this boy. And yet he stood quietly by, just like he did with Vernon Jones. What the heck's the deal with Vernon Jones?
Mike does have it, and we've asked him not to do this. He runs around, and if some political candidate meets him and they sit and have coffee for 15 minutes and Mike likes them, Mike gives them an endorsement without doing real research, and he doesn't know. Sometimes there's 6 people in a race, and there might be 3 people who... So we keep telling him, Mike, don't endorse people. Just give a Flynn seal of approval. Like, maybe you're going to give the Flynn seal of approval to 3 people in a 7-man race.
I don't think anybody really cares right now about the Flynn seal of approval. I know this.
Why?
I know that some of the people that work closely with him have been part of the attack on me, like Doug Billings, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and some people in the media that I know worked under Mike, like Joe Posobiec, served under Mike. And I don't know what Mike's doing. I hope he's not doing what I'm afraid he might be doing, but I'm not making any accusations beyond the fact that Mike Flynn has had at least 2 occasions, if not 3, to stand up and speak the truth, and he has refused to do it. So I got some doubts about Mike's character now. I thought he hung the moon when I first met him. I was honored to have him in my house. Now I'm not sure I'd ever let him back in my house, Patrick.
Well, I'm sure he did not realize that you wanted him to do more than repost your...
No, that's just not true. I wrote him about Vernon Jones several times. I've got the text. I don't just pull stuff out of thin air.
How about, no, but I mean the stuff about Kyle. I'm sure he thought he was doing his duty as a friend just to repost whatever you said.
He didn't do anything as a friend. He didn't say anything he didn't put his own name on standing up for me. He resent a Daily Beast interview that I recorded and said, listen to the last sentence when I talked about Jesus. The problem is the whole allegation was that I was some sort of a fraud that had stolen money from a young boy that was in trouble. Do you know how angry that makes me?
Of course.
And do you know how I feel about the people that claim to be my friends, that know it's false, and they don't stand up and fight for me? I wouldn't get in a foxhole with Mike Flynn. Now, I tell him before the battle, I ain't going to be in there for you, because I know if we went in the same foxhole, Mike, first time the shot was fired, you'd turn and run. You'd be hit in the back because you'd be a coward running. I'm not happy with Mike Flynn, and you can tell him I said that. If he's a hotshot general, he ought to come down here and sit down and talk to me. He can fly all over the country. He never offered to come and sit down and talk with me. And I told Joe. Old Joe called me yesterday. He was in a tizzy. What are you doing? What are you doing? You're going to hurt Mike? I said, I'm not hurting Mike. I'm telling people the truth. If the truth hurts, I'm sorry. I told him the same thing essentially I told you, what he did with me with Jones and what he did with me with Kyle. But that's not the problem. It's not about me. It's about the bigger issue of what is Mike doing. I know he's been planting questions to suggest that people to ask him if he's going to run for vice president. Is Flynn looking to run for president in 2024? Because it looks to me that Mike is not fighting to fix 2020, that Mike is looking for his own agenda to potentially run for office in 2024. That's not somebody I want to do business with, because I know the election was stolen. Mike knows it. And it's a communist effort to take over our presidency. And if we don't fix it, we're going to be lost. They've been cheating in these elections for 20 years. They use the Chad stuff to go into computer elections. And we cannot continue to vote in rigged elections. And there's Mike out there going that there was a red wave in Virginia. That's a lie. There was no red wave in Virginia. But Mike was suggesting we could vote our way out of a rigged election system. That's errant nonsense. Mike wanted everybody to look forward and stay in a rigged system when he should have been saying what everybody knew, that Youngkin, I know President Trump had to endorse him. He had to make a decision to go Republican over Democrat. But Youngkin was 20-some years as the CEO of Carlyle. Carlyle's owned by State Street. State Street owns Dominion.
Right.
Youngkin's a rhino Republican or communist. I don't know, but he's not a patriot. And then you got Mike Flynn saying there's a red wave. That's not true. What's wrong with Mike?
Well, wait a second. There's a red wave in the sense that they got the governorship and the state legislature.
Listen, Patrick, you're putting party labels on things. That doesn't apply anymore. It's not what side you say you're on. Half or 75% of the Republicans are Democrats.
Right.
And Youngkin is not a patriot Republican. He said he's going to audit the vote. He ain't audited anything. I think he's a liar. I think he's a wolf in sheep's clothing. And Mike Flynn ought to be smart enough to figure that out. I figured it out. I'm sure he's smarter than I am.
Negative. He's very negative on Youngkin now. He's very negative. He understands
what you need to do, Patrick, and it's just my personal friendship advice. From what you've told me about Sidney, you need to shine light on the darkness. You need to get out and tell people this.
No, I'm not going to go out and badmouth her.
It's not a matter of badmouthing her. My God, you're talking about somebody that might be doing some bad things with people's money. You have an obligation to the public, because if you don't talk about it publicly, it'll continue to be done in the dark. The problem will only get worse. It'll never get better.
The thing to do is perhaps talk to some authorities.
Well, listen, that's not I don't have firsthand knowledge to do that. But if you have the knowledge you've told me, if you came to me hypothetically and said, "What do?" I'd probably tell you, go to someone that's in the Department of Justice. Although I don't know who you trust there now, but I would rather be telling them that and let them decide what to do than to not tell them that. And then they might come back and say that somehow you were involved and you were covering it up. So, I mean, I'm not here to give you legal advice. I'm just giving you common sense advice. I wouldn't sit on this story if it's what you've told me is true. It's a bad story. It sounds very bad for Sidney Powell.
I hear you. Listen, on another subject, and then I'll get off. Do you remember as we had that wonderful dinner table conversation, and you talked for a long time, and then you asked me, which I so enjoyed, and hearing your story, and then you asked me to tell you my story, and I told you one that kind of no one knew what to make of it.
Well, you told me that you were almost had like a national, I don't know if I'd say marshal's license, but you had some national type of security or law enforcement. I've actually forgotten what you told me about. I was impressed by it. It was like you were deputized across the country.
I just sent you a story that I just sent you the story of it. And if you want some good bedtime reading, start reading that story. And call me back if you want to chat about it.
Well, what was it you told me that you had? I know you told me about Hillary Clinton and you were working for the government when you gave her the money or something.
The Senate Judiciary Committee in 2006, with whom I've been working for about a year, the Senate, the chairman called me in with 7 other senators and told me, we think you're right. There's some kind of systemic corruption taking over the United States government, and we can't stop it. It's our job to stop it. The Senate Judiciary Committee has the highest It's our responsibility to investigate corruption, which in a sense makes us the final guarantor of the Constitution. And our ability to investigate corruption transcends every other power within government. If we want to investigate the CIA or we want to investigate the people who make nuclear weapons, we get to, and they don't get to stop us. Patrick, we think that you're right. Some kind of systemic corruption is taking over the United States. We can't stop it, but you're going to stop it for us. We're deputizing you with this letter that's going to sit for the rest of your life in a safe. And the letter is from the Senate Judiciary Committee in 2006. And the first paragraph says that there's some kind of systemic corruption infiltrating and taking over the federal institutions of our national government. And the second paragraph says the Senate Judiciary Committee requests that Patrick Byrne be shown extraordinary latitude under the law to investigate the federal government. And
is this the story? This is the story you said you sent to me. You want me to read?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll read
it's
it.
In that story.
I'll read it. Well, listen, I appreciate you. I appreciate you calling me. I appreciate your candor and talking with me. I'm not the arbiter. I'm not the.
I'm not looking for being an arbiter.
Well, I'm not the person. I'm not the person that's going to resolve what's going on. It's not my business. It was my business, I thought, to tell the truth about what I knew because of what was being done with me with Kyle Rittenhouse. And it's hard for me to believe that Mike Flynn did not know from Joe about the fact that I had done what I signed a personal guarantee in November on a $150,000 note because I wanted that boy to get out as quickly as possible. And I think Mike knew that. I think Joe knew it. And I don't understand why he stood mute and let them say that I delayed to grift. I didn't take a dime from Kyle Rittenhouse. I'm not a thief. I've never done anything like that in my life. The evidence is conclusive that it didn't happen here. I've put all the documentation out publicly. And yet these Mockingbird media people continue to tell the lie. Now, I don't know what's going on with David Hancock. I personally think he's a CIA or deep state operative. I believe that because he's been attacking me for over a year and a half. And there's no reason for him to be obsessed with me unless he's paid to do it. So I wanted it stopped, and I still want it stopped. But if I can't get it done by telling people they've got to back off, then I'll start filing lawsuits. I don't have time to do it, but I will if I have to. So that's why I put that stuff out there today. And I didn't mean to step on any toes, but I only told the truth.
Well, it was an odd coincidence because I was calling you today to sort of wish you well and ask you, would you mind I'm a visitor in Tomatley if I'm driving through South Carolina.
Well, if you're ever down this way, I certainly want you to stop by and see me. Tomatley is open to visitors. I like to have people come by and see how beautiful it is. We've done a lot with it in the past year. You'll be impressed. I know you're only here a short day, but my property managers and assistant managers have done a wonderful job with the property, and I'm proud of it. God blessed me with being steward of a very unique piece of property. So stay in touch with me. I
stayed there 2 nights and I loved it. And I wanted to come back many times. And I will go on and find whatever your statement was, and I will repost it and say, look, I met the gentleman for about 48 hours. And I can tell you, man, when I saw Kyle say that the other night, it didn't occur to me for a second he was telling the truth. Never occurred to me.
I'd like to see somebody say that.
It didn't. I don't think he knows he's lying. I think he's been manipulated by somebody. And he would even take the time. The fact that he broke the interview to do that and make that point, someone told him to do that.
Yeah. Well, somebody ought to tell that.
I think I will.
All right, Patrick.
Later, Lynn.
God bless you. All right. Bye-bye.